Your mind plays tricks on you when you fall in love with a long-distance loner who says flat out they don't want a relationship. This is like an absent character. They're present only as an electronic voice or a digital image, but they're never a real person at your side, like living with you, going day to day with you from this experience to that experience. And this can be the perfect blank canvas for a limerent fantasy. If only we could be together, right? That's a limerent thought, never doing the math to understand that the person clearly, openly, strongly tells you that it will never happen. So who is avoidant here? My letter today is from a woman I'll call Sasha, and she writes, "Hello, Anna. I want your help to understand the situation I am in because I feel very confused about it and I can't make sense of it. I don't know if I'm deluding myself or if my intuition is right. So I've got the fairy pencil. I'm going to go in and circle some things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's going on with Sasha here." So she says, "About 2 years ago, I met a man at an online school for self-development and healing from trauma. He had a dismissive, avoidant attachment style, while I had already done a lot of healing, and I considered myself now to have an earned, secure attachment style. I had learned a lot about the dismissive avoidant style. So dismissive avoidant is one of the attachment styles that is fundamentally insecure, but it avoids people, and it's a person who avoids intimacy, doesn't want to talk about promises, doesn't want to talk about feelings, doesn't want to commit. That's the tendency. And it's on a spectrum. And then dismissive is the part where they're just kind of dismissive about it. They're just like, well, too bad. I had learned a lot about this style because 2 of my previous partners had this issue, and I poured my heart to try to understand them and improve the relationships. The relationships still didn't work out, but I felt a great appreciation and care about the challenges and qualities of people with this kind of attachment style. I thought it could work well for me if I found a dismissive avoidant partner who was willing to heal and become securely attached. Uh-oh. Okay, I can see what's going to happen right there. We'll come back to it. I was very attracted to this new man I met because he was so dedicated to his own healing. It seemed to have maximum priority in his life, and he said he wanted to overcome the intergenerational trauma from his family and become a good father and husband in the future. We became friends and started having regular video calls that went on for hours at a time. We talked about what we wanted in life, and the more I got to know him, the more I saw our values, goals, preferred lifestyle, how we wanted to raise our future children, all aligned very, very much. I could not believe someone like that actually existed, and that I could have found someone so compatible with my own values. However, we lived in different countries and different continents, but he does not live in his country of origin. He moved a few years ago and has only been living in that region he's in now for about 4 years. He's 32, I'm 39. After a few months, I told him I had romantic feelings for him, and I told him I thought we were very compatible. To my surprise, he said he was open to talking about us having a romantic relationship, when he had previously mentioned he didn't want long-distance relationships. But it seems he had assumed in his mind that I would be moving to be with him, but this was not possible for me due to health reasons, and I told him so. After that, he completely shut down the idea of us being partners and refused to consider moving himself, though I tried to come up with alternatives. He told me we could continue to be friends, and I accepted it. I really tried to move on from my romantic feelings for him and see him only as a friend. Well, that right there. Okay, we're going to come back to that. But it didn't work. Of course not. Over time, he started to invite me to video call more and more often until we were seeing each other every morning and evening almost every day, hours at a time. I left it up to him to initiate contact because he was the one who needed more space than me, and I could accommodate that. We built deep trust with each other over time and provided each other with a safe space to explore our feelings and be vulnerable. I held space for him. Okay, there's all these psychology terms here. They're a little disturbing to me. I'll tell you why in a minute. I held space for him for hours while he cried. He told me about his deepest traumas, and he felt safe enough to share in a way he never did with anyone else. He told me he never felt so understood and loved. When he saw me, he told me he felt great joy, and sometimes he even mentioned it felt like heaven. The way he looked at me and these things he said all indicated to me that he was in love with me, but whenever I mentioned it, he denied it and said he had already told me we could not be more than friends. But his pull toward me was very strong. We tried to put up boundaries and see each other less often, but then after a while, we ended back to seeing each other every day by his own initiative. I said yes because I felt so happy to spend time with him. I wanted it too. We had few conflicts because we understood, yeah, you wanted it, okay. We had few conflicts because we understood each other so well and we had compatible values. Well, like not at all actually, but okay. And when a conflict did arise, we used the tools we both had learned to overcome it relatively easily and quickly. I never knew a relationship could be so joyful and easy. Joyful and easy, it sounds miserable. You're getting your heart broken. We grew together and brought out the best in each other. I felt free to be myself with him. I felt accepted and loved for who I am, and he said he felt the same. I was everything he said he wanted in a partner, yet he didn't want me to be his partner. I was so confused. I'm so confused word. In 90% of the time when it shows up in these letters, it's denial. So we'll talk about this. He told me he never had a romantic relationship before and had only been in love once in his life with a woman who rejected him. They never dated. He was still grieving that after more than 3 years. He said before doing this healing work, he couldn't even imagine living with a partner because he needed his space and independence. Recently, the desire to have a partner and live with a partner had become very strong for him. After 1.5 years of this going back and forth, well, not really going back and forth, just going in one direction. Him pulling me close and telling me we should be only friends when I pointed it out to him that he was treating me as his girlfriend. I decided that it was best for us to go no contact and move on because I could not stand it anymore when he started talking about wanting to find a partner who was not me and potentially dating other women. It's been 6 months since we broke up our friendship and we've been in absolute no contact for 3 months. I still miss him every day, and I remember all the beautiful moments that we shared and how peaceful and joyful and safe I felt with him, right, except when you were miserable and longing and feeling confused and used. I still remember all the things he said that made me think he was in love with me and how he kept denying it. All right, we're going to come back to that after 1.5 years you had to try to imagine it, and because he never told you that, okay? And how he kept denying it. I can't understand how he could walk away from a relationship like this and imagine he can find another amazing relationship easily just because he wants a woman who lives close to him when it's not even his country of origin and he's only lived there for a few years. I've been looking all my life, working so hard to heal myself and to make relationships work, and I never found anything comparable to what I had with him. I don't think I will find it again. Being realistic, I tried meeting new men, but they were disappointing and behaved in unhealthy ways that I'm not willing to tolerate anymore. I decided to look for a new partner because it just feels like a waste of my time and energy. I need your help to give me perspective. Am I just deluding myself here thinking he's in love with me? When I asked him to give me a list of reasons why he didn't want to be my partner because I was having difficulty moving on, he refused. He never gave me a straight answer and got triggered and defensive whenever I tried to talk about it. The only clear reason was the distance, but to me, that does not seem like reason enough to give up on the love of your life. This is an issue we could overcome if we work together, but he didn't want to. I just feel so confused and can't make any sense of this situation. How do I move on? How do I open myself up to love someone new again, even when this beautiful relationship that was more than I ever hoped for also didn't work out? It all just feels pointless and hopeless. I hope you can help me. And that is from Sasha. Okay, how sad that you think this relationship was more than you could ever hope for. I'm going to start right out by saying, girl, you need to hope for more. You need to hope for a physically present partner who is really into you and wants to be with you and says so. So I'm just going to set the bar there. That's what you didn't have. Anything less is not going to do. It's just not going to do. I know some people meet at a distance, and very quickly you can determine if this is going somewhere. And I know people who have successfully dated online for a while, and then one of them flies to see the other and gets an apartment nearby so they can spend some time. Like, it's a big deal to try to actually do courtship long distance. And so you have to be very serious about it. And both people have to completely have the same intention for it. And if it goes on longer than 6-8 weeks with no intention for that, it's not a thing. It's just not a thing. You know, we could probably spend more time unpacking it and figuring out what's what if people live in the same town and you're young and you have all the time in the world. So, Sasha, I just want to say one of the core misunderstandings you have here is that you thought he needed healing and you are already healed and you consider yourself to have a secure attachment style. And I would just say the writing's on the wall, my friend. You don't have that. You're attaching really hard to somebody who said over and over again, I'm not into you, and who was basically your emotional vampire, just using all your devotion to feed himself without giving you what obviously was called for in that type of relationship, of you giving him that. Now, I don't really want to talk about him being a bad guy. I want to talk about you being limerent on somebody and using all this psychological jargon to make it sound healthy and wonderful and gaslighting yourself that it's the most wonderful relationship ever. This is not a wonderful relationship. It's a vampire you signed up for. Okay, so you've been going to this program, and I just tell you, like, when I hear online school for personal development and trauma healing, like, that could be really good, but if people are trying to date in that environment, there's going to be a lot of people who have a lot of trauma. There's a lot of limerent, weird stuff that goes on in personal development gatherings of any kind, and online is like a double element where limerence and sort of deception and, you know, we can build people up into something they're not, that we would figure out very quickly if we saw them. You'd be able to feel because what was going on here is he was obviously very avoidant. Okay, fine. But you believing that, but if we would just work together, he would love me. That's whoops. Even people who are totally available, if they're not into you, it's not happening. That's the problem. I'm being very tough fairy with you because I'm trying to get through your idea that you're so healed and what's wrong with him that he doesn't see that you're the perfect match. So because you will give your entire life to somebody who tells you over and over again, I'm not into you in that way, and then you sit there and hold space for them, as you say, that is psychobabble for just sitting there being a sponge, a codependent sponge for somebody. Don't do that. He's not that for you. Or maybe he was, but I have some workarounds you can use so that this never happens again. So let me get to that. Let me just come through this stuff. The video calls were an hour at a time. Were hours at a time. They went on for hours, even though he said, I'm not interested in you in that way. And you're like, that's okay. I'll give you hours of my time every day at your disposal and on your schedule. Well, he doesn't seem like a great character for doing this to another person, but I just want to say, you kept signing up for it, and in your mind, you're just thinking, surely if I do this for him, he will love me, and if he keeps coming back for more, it means he's in love with me and wants to be with me. But you got to listen to what people say, first of all. They say, look at what they do, not just what they say. But when it comes to saying, I'm really in love with you and I want to be with you, that doesn't work two ways. People have to be saying that for it to be true. They have to be saying it for it to be true. If they can't say it yet, they're not ready to say it yet. Because it's not something they're prepared to deal with or act on. But the fact that he went looking for another relationship is flat out evidence that he really wasn't kidding you. He wasn't interested in that, but he was happy to have a friend who would be like a free therapist for him. I'm very glad you outed yourself. You told him how you felt so that you could move the story forward and not just be stuck in a fantasy. And then you decided to be friends. So I used to have this kind of messy relationship in my life too. And it was a miserable many years that this went on. And it stopped 100% when I did a couple of things. And one of them was I did not stay friends in any relationship with a man where one of us had feelings and the other didn't. That's a myth that you can just carry on and revert to friendship on that. Maybe after 10 years, maybe after 20 years, but even then, who knows? It is not healthy. It's an avoidant strategy of your own, and that's kind of what I want to call you out on. You have become the perfect girlfriend for somebody who's totally avoidant. You're online, you're there for him, you adore him. He has to give nothing, no promises, and when he gets the whim, he can go for somebody else. It's like the perfect girlfriend. So I use a word here called crap fit, meaning we fit ourselves to crap, to unacceptable situations or unacceptable people. You like the person, but the situation was He just, he wasn't going to give it back to you. It was unrequited love that went on and on. And so you fit yourself to that by just, I saw the escalation of the psychological words, of this being a meaningful thing, but I don't see it as sparkly as you do. I see it as a very sad loss of your emotional energy, the great love that you have to give to somebody for the future that you want. And this thing where you had the same values, I would just say a core value that's totally, the number one value in a relationship is like, I want to be with you. I can be with you. I will move to be with you. You are the one I want to be with. So I don't know if you want to categorize that as a value, but it's the core one. It doesn't really matter what is like-minded when it comes to romantic feelings. When you have that feeling for somebody, it categorically changes the nature of the relationship. And then when you play along that you're their friend, it's basically, this is going to be hard, a strong word, but it's manipulation, thinking that if you just play along, they will come around, that you can sort of trick them into it. And even when they say it's not what they want. So, trying to push them into it is not really respecting them, if you can believe that. Like, I think that when we're in this situation, we feel exploited, but that's not really what's going on. Yes, he's using you and he's taking advantage consciously or unconsciously of your willingness to basically put up with any dribble that he'll give you, any little crumb. So you had a few conflicts, you understood each other, you repaired things. So you got confused when he said he didn't want you as a partner. But that is an unequivocal statement. It's not a confusing statement. You got confused because you had this fantasy going at the same time that was overlaying the reality. And so it is hard, when you're in that's limerence, when it's very strong like that. Limerence is a infatuation or intense obsession with somebody that overrides reality. It can become like an addiction. So you weren't really in reality. You kept seeing love where there was no love. It was certainly a kind of love, but it wasn't the kind of love that you kept believing you were receiving. And he had never had a romantic relationship before. So at 32, that is a sign of great avoidance. He said before doing this healing work, he couldn't imagine it, but then he did want to do it, which is a perfectly reasonable goal for somebody who goes through a big program for healing trauma, is to become more open to a relationship. But you say after 1.5 years of this going back and forth, but the thing is, it just sounds like he never wavered on saying he didn't want a relationship. He just acted like somebody very close to you. But that's why I use the word vampire. It's a lovely energy when somebody adores you and thinks you're so amazing and, fits their schedule to you. You always have this companionship on your terms. And that's a vampire. A relationship is two-way. They show up for you. They're with you on your birthday. They care when you're sad. They drive you to the doctor if you're going to need a ride home. They're with you. It's a whole different thing. So he wasn't treating you as his girlfriend. It was like this other thing while he thought about finding a girlfriend. I could sure see why it felt like that for a long time, but I'm really proud of you for asking him directly and getting your answer, and then you just got stuck when you had the answer. So yeah, now you haven't had contact. Good move. That is what you do about a relationship like this. Still miss him. That's understandable. And you remember all the beautiful moments that you shared, how peaceful, joyful, and safe I felt with him. Okay, you're remembering some of the moments. What you're glossing over is the moments where you were in emotional agony, that he didn't return your love, that he was trying to meet another woman. It wasn't joyful. It was unfulfilling. It was sad. It was a slap in the face. That's the trouble with unrequited love. It feels awful. It feels good at first because it's a little bit of a respite as long as you have hope. But it turns into limerence, like toxic limerent. Limerence is always toxic, but it turns into that when hope becomes the dope. Hope is the addiction. I just know there's hope, and then we'll start to go, no, I hear hope in this. No, I think there was like a hidden meaning when he said he wasn't interested. And, no shame, because I just know you were neglected as a kid. This is what we do. This is what we do. We end up with a superpower to see love where there is no love. But in adulthood, this is a terrible way to go, and it blocked you from finding real love, like real actual love with somebody who loves you and is totally excited to be with you. You're saying you tried to meet new men, but they were disappointing and behaved in unhealthy ways. All right, so what's happening now is what happens to like most of us, and you're right at a precipice of your healing. And the question for you in your healing is, Can you get past this idea that men just accidentally show up as like unhealthy and unavailable? Or can you see that actually you are choosing them? You are falling for them, choosing them, investing your emotional energy in them. The alternative is you shut it down as soon as you realize it's not going anywhere, and you continue to date and see if you can find what will work for you. Now, what happens with trauma is we sort of lose this capacity to dream of our future. We just don't know what we want. And I ask people with trauma, like, well, what would be your ideal partner? And there is almost always a long silence. It's almost impossible to articulate, let alone envision what we want early in healing. So as much healing work as you've done in the relationship department, I think there's a ways to go here, happily. It doesn't have to be like this ever again. What you do is you set up knowing clearly what you need, somebody who can be with you, is into you, attracted, available. And then, maybe be pretty Victorian about friendships with men where you're online every day with them. They knew something in those days. You don't get your emotional energy all invested in somebody if they haven't sort of declared that they're interested in you. That goes for either gender. You need to know if somebody's interested in you. And occasionally relationships will come together mutually after one person was reticent at first, but usually not when the other person pursued them, for a year and a half. So that's usually not how it happens. So you have to use your discernment to actually just let go of people if they're not that. Make good friends, close friends with women. Make those your friends, so that those are the people to have safety and joy with. Men, because that's who you're attracted to, you gotta kind of treat them a little differently. And I totally believe you if you have some male friends, but good, stable friendships between men and women don't have this element in them. They can't withstand constant contact. It's gonna turn into what you're dealing with here and break down and have to go to no contact, which is good. I would encourage you, take your no contact further. I'm glad you wrote to me. If you want to use my daily practice so that twice a day you have a place to put all your angsty feelings about the memory of him and what you miss, that's a good thing to do. It's a very specific practice. It's a free course that's always available down in the description section or on my website at crappychildhoodfairy.com. And I lead free calls every 2 weeks to do the techniques together with anybody who wants to come and answer questions. This is what saved my life. This is what gradually got me out of the dysfunctional relationship patterns too. And so that I could marry a real guy who really loves me. And we've been married now for 10 years and together for almost 16. So that's a whole different thing from what I used to put myself through. So one last thing, you said that he refused to give you an answer about why he didn't want to be with you. And this is often the case. And certainly an avoidant is definitely not going to tell you, but I'll tell you what it was. For one reason or another, he wasn't into you. He didn't have romantic feelings for you. And when we don't have that for another person, no matter how wonderful they are, the relationship can't move forward. There it is. That's what it is. And people out of kindness or avoidance don't want to tell us, explicitly that that's the case. They don't feel it. That's what it is. And that is your answer. His actions are your answer. And his seeking a new woman to have a relationship with using you as his friend for that, which you said you were, is your answer completely. He does want a relationship, but just not with you. So the sooner you can just embrace that and go, okay, that's why it felt the way it felt, and you can start to let the lessons in. It's hard to face, but until you do, you're kind of destined to keep repeating this pattern. You can change this pattern, but you have to recognize the signs of limerence when it's happening. If you want to know what they are, I have put them on a PDF. It's a free download that you can get right here by clicking on it, and I will see you very soon.